Hello, John.
Hello.
Woo.
How are you? Welcome, welcome.
I've done a, no, it's just because it's Domaine du Pégau scarf.
Oh, really? Are you
Yeah.
into merchandising now? Do you have T-shirts and?
I have T-shirts, I have scarf, and I have everything. This scarf is very interesting because I have all the name of the cuvée written in the middle.
Wow, very nice. It looks beautiful. Very hip, I might say. You would blend into the streets of New York City very well, although there are nobody's on the streets of New York City, unfortunately. So you might stick out at these times, but it is great to have you here. Thanks for coming and joining us here on Zoom. We have a lot of great wine lovers here to taste your wines, learn about the wines. So Domaine du Pégau. Now, your family has roots going back to, in Châteauneuf, to the 1600s, right? I mean, a very long history in the region.
Not exactly in Châteauneuf du Pape. No, it was in the village around. One of the villages, Courtezon, 5 kilometers away. And they were not winemaker. Is 1600 that concerned the family name and the name, because the name is very French. Yes, and that started, they worked the vines, but they didn't own the vines. They started to be really owner. My grandparents, they started to be owner.
Okay, and so when did you guys start making the wines? Pégau, I mean, so you started to buy vines, the family started to own vines, but then you just sold the grapes. You sold the grapes off to other producers?
My family, no, my grandmother, my father's mother made the wine because she was Italian. She knew how to make the wine. And my grandfather was more involved for the olive oil, for the cherries as well. Different, culture we have around here, different farm we have. My grandmother, she made the wine. She sold mostly in bulk. That means she made the wine and sold the wine after in bulk. And she decided once to bottle like 2,000 bottles a year.
Okay. Was that just for the family or just for kind of drinking around the house, or?
That was for clients. She had from Switzerland, Belgium. Before it was really, very closed country. We never exported the wine. And the closest country, with a lot of interest for Châteauneuf du Pape, that was Swiss and Belgium country. A little bit of Germany as well. They know Châteauneuf du Pape for so long.
Right. It has a great reputation in the region that goes back to for many, many centuries. So when was the idea to create Domaine du Pégau? When did that start, and when did you join the family business, or were you always a part of the business even growing up?
For sure. I didn't grow up in Châteauneuf du Pape, but I stayed with my grandmother when I was very, very young. I mean, around 5 years old. And then sometime on the weekend, I remember I saw her, and she asked me all the time to climb on the top of the cask, the big barrels, to just check if the big barrels, they were full. Because this is very important to have a full barrel, no air, between the top and the wine. And then, so I always been, I could say, in touch with wine. But I created Domaine du Pégau after, not straight after my study and when I passed my exam, but I worked in Paris, then I decided to be back here to really be more involved in the wine and in the vineyard, especially in the vineyard. I worked first for a year with my father's family. That means with my grandparents, but my grandfather was already passed away. So my grandmother, my father, his sister and his brothers, and we were too many relays. Why I decided in late 87, early 88 to create our own domain. So I created with my parents, and we completely moved from my grandparents' place, which was the other side of the village, to the place where we are today. Then we moved, we stopped to make the wine at my grandparents' place. We made the wine in 1988. We made it in the garden outside because the winery was not ready. And we took the mast to press it to my grandmother because we didn't get any press. Then in 1989, so a year after, we really had all the convenient in a new winery and in a new cellar. And the name was, the name of Domaine du Pégau was created in 1987 when I started to work with my father because I wanted to create a company.
Very nice. So this really is your vision and your child, Domaine du Pégau, and you've really become one of the top producers in the region over the last 30 years. So congratulations for that, and we're very thankful to share. And what does Pégau mean? Isn't it, there's a meaning behind Pégau, the word Pégau?
Yes, I wanted to show what is a Pégau. So the Pégau is that. Why I use that name? Because it's a wine jug made in clay. And that wine jug was used during the 14th century. I mean, during the Pope period. The thing is that the Pope, they didn't use it because it's not full of diamond. You know, the Pope, they were very rich, very powerful, and they used a lot of gold or silver. But this sort of jug in clay, that was more for the people in the village. And Pégau means also in Provençal sticky, because clay is sticky. So that jug took the name of the material with what it is made. We can say Pégau in French, or we can pronounce Pégau in Provençal dialect.
Okay, Pégau, I like that. Yeah, I tend to call it Pégau, so I'm going to stick with that. So beautiful. It's like the original decanter. Before there were nice fancy glass decanters, that was it. So very good, very interesting. Well, let's start talking about the wines here. I've already been sipping on this delicious white wine, Châteauneuf du Pape Blanc. So what are the main grapes in the Châteauneuf du Pape Blanc, or at least your Châteauneuf du Pape Blanc?
Sorry, I have something in the middle. Yeah. Okay. The Châteauneuf du Pape Blanc, the main type of grapes is Clairette. We always choose Clairette because the white, the vineyard in white is average 50 years old. 50 years old, the vineyard. And it's not co-planted, I mean mixed co-planted. It's co-planted with row organized. That means at a certain time when we pull out, we planted with row, full row. Is why in Châteauneuf du Pape white, we can quantify exactly the percentage of grapes we have in the blend, which is 60% Clairette, 20% Grenache white, 10% Beauboulenc, a local grape, and 10% Roussanne. So 4 types of grapes, but mostly Clairette, because the Clairette gives the acidity, a very lively white wine with nice minerality, great length, you know, something a little bit sharp, and I like it. I'm a really fan of some of Riesling or Chardonnay or Chenin with a high acidity.
Yeah, this is delicious. I mean, you know, even when you think about the Rhone, you think about, you know, Marsanne, Roussanne, Grenache Blanc even, and of course Viognier, but Clairette, you know, it's even you know, you never really hear about it. So it's fascinating to see this wine, which is so delicious, does have great acidity, great richness. I mean, there is a freshness and a richness here to this white. What kind of food do you think Châteauneuf du Pape Blanc, what kind of food do you like to eat with your Châteauneuf Blancs yourself?
Usually I like to pair the white wine Châteauneuf du Pape, because the 20% of Grenache bring this, you know, this richness and power. And the white, it's very close to 13.5% alcohol, sometimes 14. Like you have the 2018, the alcohol was a little bit lower than the 2019, you know. I have the 19 here.
Okay, okay.
19 was bottled last Saturday. And 19 has a high level of acidity. 2018, a little bit less acidity, alcohol, sorry. I talk about the alcohol. This is a high alcohol, and 2018, a little bit lower. Because in 18, we had some rain, and we had some problems with the rot as well. You have to know the 2018, in white, we worked in a biodynamic culture. In biodynamic, we couldn't spray. And even if we spray with organic and biodynamic product, that was not efficient enough with the problem we had in 2018. We lost 50% of our yield in 2018. Then the white you drink tonight, usually we produce 4,000 bottles of white Châteauneuf du Pape Cuvée Reservée, and we only have less than 2,000.
Wow, that's a tiny production. I mean, so this is a really small production wine. I think people don't realize how rare the white Châteauneuf du Papes are in general. I mean, is that for the whole region? The whites are very small production like that, or just for you, or?
Sure, no, the white is smaller production in Châteauneuf du Pape, but now the white becomes more and more famous in the people, because also the white in Châteauneuf du Pape become more and more fresh and lively, less heavy or oxidized style they were before. Today, the white wine, they are very sophisticated, and we could really well manage in a winery to make some great white wine. Before, we don't have all this engineering to make the fresh white in the south of France. Mostly of the fresh and nice acidity white wine, they were in the north or in the east. But in the south of France, it was very difficult in Châteauneuf with the stone, with the heat, with the dryness in the summer. It was more adapted for red wine than the white wine. But today in a winery, we work with more technical engineering, is why we can cool it down the juice, we can control step by step the winemaking process. We have a very long process. We can really filter the white in the best condition. This is completely different than before. It's why the people, they like more and more the white wine, and the white wine become more and more famous.
I find myself drinking a lot of white wines in general, you know, and I love white wine, and, you know, I drink it often. And this is a real delight to have this. And how, I mean, it seems ready to go. Like, I mean, it's a serious wine. I feel like it can age. What is your general philosophy about the aging of your whites?
You know, the white Châteauneuf du Pape aged very well, because I tasted in my life not Domaine du Pégau, but I remember I tasted a Magnum of 1956 in white. I even tasted 1913 in white, in bottle. That was oxidized. But 1956, I will remember, it was amazing. And this wine was made with Picpoul and Clairette. Absolutely not with the Grenache. But for me, the Châteauneuf du Pape, the idea is a Grenache. So even if we don't use mostly Grenache in a white wine, we need to add some Grenache to have this roundness, this fatness, this alcohol, bring the, you know, the alcohol really push the aroma out of the glasses, which is very, very interesting. And that give the typicity of Châteauneuf du Pape.
Right. Well, the alcohol, I mean, it must be a challenge because it's so hot, you know, in the summer in the Rhône Valley, to always kind of keep your eyes on those alcohol levels and make sure you find that balance and freshness like you did in 2018.
So 18, it was fresh also because with the rain, it was slightly cooler than usually. But the 19 is also very fresh. And, you know, I have another cuvée called A Tempo, which is very small production as well. And this one is the same. I produced for a total vintage of 18, 500 bottles.
Oh my God, 500.
Because we lost a lot. But in 2019, this vintage, we have a little more than 4,000 bottles. So we are very happy for the Cuvée Reservée 19. But 18 is very rare. So we have no one bottle left. So if the people you want to taste 18, you have to go to Acker's and to rush in because it's finished.
I think, Lily, you better call the wholesaler up immediately and buy all, it sounds like. Because based on how this is tasting, I mean, this is a great wine to have in a wine. And how much does this retail in New York, Lily, for?
Let's see if I can pull that up.
What do you
Hold on one moment. I'll put it in the chat. Apologies.
Right. So the tempo you started to make just recently, like it's only 3-4 years you've been making that cuvée, or how long?
Which cuvée? The Cuvée Reservée or the Cuvée
Tempo? The Tempo.
A Tempo since 2014.
14.
And since 2014, I decided with, you know, I have a guy who is working at my place for 15 years and he's Austrian. And we decided together to start biodynamic on the white wine because the white vineyard, because the white vineyard is only 2 hectares, 2.5 now. 2.5 hectares we can easily manage to grow the vines in biodynamic. Then we started in 2014, and one of the field, I have 2 fields, and for 2.5 of hectare, which is the 5 acres, is divided in 2 fields. One field has a better exposition, so it's why this field I wanted to separate, and we started to do the A Tempo in 2014. But the white Cuvée Reservée, it's many, many years I'm doing it. But to really handle and manage, it was quite complicated, and often it was very variable vintage, more significant difference in a vintage before 2014. Now it's more consistent, it's organized, Cuvée Reservée for 4,000 bottles, and usually Cuvée A Tempo for 1,000 bottles.
And is the breakup, is the percentage of grapes the same? How do you make the A Tempo selection? Is it vineyard? Is it barrel? Is it, what is it?
The A Tempo is a vineyard. It's a vineyard by a mix of, I call it trilogy. Trilogy, how you say trilogy? Anyway, trilogy is because it's 3 type of soil, almost on the same field, vineyard. The trilogy is sandy soil, stony soil, and clay. And I use in a blend 1/3 of Grenache, Roussanne, and Clairette. And after the winemaking process is made in inox, stainless steel, concrete egg, you know, concrete egg, and barrels, but barrels already used, average 2 small barrels, already second-hand barrels in a white wine. And usually I like to have white wine from white barrels, secondhand from Condrieu.
Nice. Another great white Rhone, yeah.
Can I ask a question, please, about the change in wines? Has it changed the ageability of the white wines?
The ageability? What do you mean?
We talked before about how you had some older white Châteauneufs, as I have. They're wonderful. But I'm wondering, with the change in style that you talked about, will it mean that the wines will continue to age the same way, or will they not?
I think that will, because the aging is based mostly of the time on you have two sides of aging. You can age a wine with a high sugar content. You can age a wine with a high acidity content. And for me, Châteauneuf du Pape, the way we make the wine now with a high acidity, like the 1956 I tasted, was made mostly with only type of grapes with a high acidity, Clairette and Picpoul. Picpoul, nobody consider Picpoul as a very important type of grapes, because Picpoul grows in the really south of France, southwest of France, mostly close to the sea, and is usually used for the vin de France. But the Picpoul planted in Châteauneuf du Pape, the characteristics, they are completely different, but it's still the same type of grapes. But when you age the Picpoul, nobody can bet to age a Picpoul. But when I tasted 1956 and the Picpoul and the Clairette, that was amazing. I said, okay, Châteauneuf du Pape, in any type of grapes between the 5 we have in a white wine, we have the right to use the 5 different type of grapes. In any case, the wine can age for sure long time and develop some different aroma, sometimes a little more bread toasted, or more on the different nuts like almond, or when they're getting old, more hazelnuts. And when they are young today, with a more technical winemaking process, they are more on the white flowers, on the sometimes a little bit of peach. Not really the style of exotic. It's much better on the white flower and something very fresh.
Yeah, it is very fresh. I mean, it's a fantastic white. I'm kind of sad to stop drinking the white, but we do have 3 red wines to talk about as well. And starting with the Plan Pégau. Now, the Plan Pégau is you've been making it for a few years, but it's a blend of different vintages. I guess it's your version of a Côte de Rhône. It's technically not a Châteauneuf. What is this wine? Explain it to us.
Alors, the Plan Pégau, in fact, is on the market since the Domaine du Pégau, because we always had vineyard classified in Châteauneuf du Pape, and we had a small field close to the Rhône River, where mostly of the time the vin de France there are. Vin de France means non-classified vineyard, and then we had that field called this area Plan du Rhône. So that means Rhône River flat. Plan is flat in French.
Okay.
And I decided to do vin de France, a table wine, but something a little more sophisticated than a very cheap table wine. I wanted something gives to the consumer an access to our entry-level wine with and to show them, if they like the entry level, for sure they will like the Châteauneuf du Pape. That was the different stage to go to the Châteauneuf. And I call it Plan Pégau to be really closer to our name. The blend, it's Syrah, Carignan, Merlot, and Grenache. So completely different than we could expect from I could say, Rhône Valley. But the Merlot grows very well in the part of where it's very humid. Of course, closer to the Rhône, we have a lot of, dew in the morning, a lot of humidity, and we need to have a type of grapes could really resist to that humidity. Then after, because we had some vintage for the Vin de France are sometimes good, sometimes not good enough, blah blah blah. Then it's difficult to have a consistent quality for the Vin de France. Then we decided to blend different vintages to give more a style and a consistent quality to the customers. What happened? We had before only one label that called Plan Pégau. But the problem, it was a big difference between the bottling. We had a very, very large variation with the bottling. Then the people, they didn't want to buy anymore. So we had a big, I could say, a curve of the sale, because nobody was, they were interested with the Plan Pégau, but not when we changed the bottling, and nothing was mentioned on the bottles about that changing, about that new bottling. Then one day I decided to have a consistent labeling with my Châteauneuf du Pape and all the range of Pégau with a neck label. And with a neck label, we are not allowed in France to put a vintage on the label. On the Vin de France, I decided to inform the consumer by that clock cadran, the vintage blended in the wine. And now the sales grows up because the people, they can follow in the consumer, they follow in their storage which Plan Pégau they can drink. They drink the oldest Plan Pégau, and for you, you have a 12, a 13, and 14. It's usually free vintage. Actually, at the Domaine du Pégau, we have a 15, 16, and 17. And that will be, it's not bottled yet. It will be bottled next week. Next week is a new bottling of Plan Pégau, 15, 16, 17, and it will be mentioned on the neck label. And this is completely different for the consumer. They really appreciate. Now they can follow the vintage, the blend. This is great for them. And the Plan Pégau is still sophisticated wine.
What does the 20, so the other hands, it says the hands are the 12, 13, 14.
It's 2015, 2012, 2012, 2000.
2000, right, I got you. Okay, 2012, 13.
But you know, I put 21 because I hope to live until 21.
Yeah, that's it's gonna stay on the 20 for a while. Okay.
But I put 2001.
This is interesting because this to me is a very, to me it tastes like it's ready to drink. It's like it has a complex maturity to it. It to me tastes like, what I would imagine an older wine to be. Like you get that kind of more mature flavors and gaminess, and there's a nice peppery spice to it. I mean, it's almost like getting a window into an older wine, but it's a current release and it's not expensive. Is that kind of the goal?
Yeah, it is the goal because I blend it. So I want something already used, because the wine, the oldest vintage spends sometimes in an old barrique, very old barrique. Then of course this wine will have a longer oxidation through the wood to give a wine used. Sometimes it's a little bit dry that you can feel some dryness in the wood, and I blend with some younger vintage from the vat. Then you have this back mouth with old wine, and after the freshness and the fresh fruit on the start of on the beginning of the mouth.
Yeah, I think it's a great,
the mixed of that.
Yeah, no, it's a great wine. I mean, to actually get like the idea of what a mature Rhone can taste like, but at a very reasonable price. So that's exciting. So technically, is this what? It's not a Châteauneuf du Pape. It's a Vin de France. So
it's in the classification you have Vin de France. It's like we call VSEG. That means vineyard without geographic identification. That means no identification outside of any classification. After you have a Vin de Pays, which Vin de Pays you can vintage it, but the Vin de Pays we have a limited yield and some of the type of grapes imposed by the AOP. After Côte du Rhône Village, and Côte du Rhône Village with the name of the village, and then the AOP Châteauneuf du Pape. So AOP like Châteauneuf du Pape, Chigondas, Vaqueras, the Cru. Then Côte du Rhône Village with the name of the village like Séguré, Roex, Chusclan, Plan de Dieu, many different of them, more than 21. Then below Côte du Rhône Village without the name of the village. Then below Côte du Rhône, Vin de Pays and table wine. So table wine is in fact the lowest quality, but it depends if the winemaker wants to do something more sophisticated. For us, we call the Plan Pégau the little brother of Châteauneuf du Pape.
Yeah, that makes sense. So here we have a map of Châteauneuf du Pape, and now you have pretty significant holdings in the area. It's kind of grown over the years, and but you can see these are all, I guess, what you would call Ds or different terroirs within Châteauneuf du Pape, but people aren't really bottling based on this idea of vineyard. It's more just kind of the entire region, but it's what do the different colors represent here in the region? Is that a different soil, or is that
No, that older name, this is I presume is a different area. This is not it's the first time I can see this map. This map, you have the different area name. Example, for us, for the Domaine du Pégau, you see the red point of the village. Okay. And we have the vineyard classified between the lake and in that triangle. Vineyard, lake, and down to the not the south, the east, the other street here to the village. So in that triangle, we have our vineyard, and you can see the vineyard Lacrau. It's quite large. Yeah. Yes, we have Lacrau North, Lacrau East, and Lacrau West.
And Lacrau.
We have vineyard Lanert.
Okay, go ahead.
Montpertuis. So in fact, I just because I think I have one here, but I don't know if you see.
Yeah, we kind of similar. Yeah, of course. Mm-hmm.
So you can, for us, this is sandy soil. This is the brown is sandy soil. Here's the pink, it's stony soil. And for us, we have a different vineyard in that triangle.
Right, and Lacrau, of course, is a famous vineyard. I mean, Vieux Telegraph has always put Lacrau on their label, and they're one of the great, Châteauneufs along with you. So clearly, you're in the right real estate in the region.
Lacrau is the largest part of Châteauneuf du Pape. So we are many vinegrowers beyond Lacrau. Lacrau it's really big, and what I said is Lacrau east, west, north, south. So it's really a big area of Châteauneuf du Pape.
Well, speaking of Châteauneuf du Pape, we have what vintage 2014. We have the Pégau Châteauneuf du Pape, which I'm very happy to be tasting. Talk to us about 2014 in the Rhone and the last few vintages for the red wines in general, because these are the vintages that are on the market for the consumer. 14, 15, 16, 17. How were these vintages compared to each other?
So something is interesting at Domaine du Pégau. We have the same winemaking process for all the different vintage. Then it's probably one of the domain you can see the identity of the vintage. And this is very interesting because along now for 30 years, 33 years, I'm making the wine. I can guess, even if I don't remember which weather we had during the harvest, I can tell you by the vintage, the taste and everything, which weather we had
Wow.
during that vintage or that vintage. And in the few recent vintage, they were quite different, and we can feel that in the taste. Then if I start on 2014, as you have tonight for tasting today, 14 is, we had rain, but not too much. We have a warm weather, but not too much. It was a little bit cool. And we had a very, very nice red fruit, I could say very fresh, good acidity, something very, very elegant. Many people, I could say critics or not critic, or the people, they like Châteauneuf du Pape as a big wine, powerful, extracted, too big. And sometimes the vintage, like lighter vintage, I could say like 14, then they consider they are not a long aging vintage. But for me, I like to have different vintages to drink the wine in different time. The 14, for me, it's amazing. It's just a pleasure. It's a pleasure. And then I'm not really looking for something more bigger wine or something more, I could say, rich or powerful. When it starts to be a little bit warmer outside, I prefer to drink the 2014 because it's fresh, elegant, fruity. Yes, it starts to have some spiciness, but it gives you this savory gives you, you know, you want to drink again. And this is the most important. When you open a bottle, you taste the wine, you like it, it lets in your mouth something fresh with a nice flavor and taste and aroma, then you want another glass. This is the point. And 14 was a very, very balanced vintage, but lighter balanced vintage.
Well, I'm
lighter is the balance is the most important in a wine.
Yeah, I'm personally a fan of the elegant and lighter and balanced kind of vintages. So this is great to see you trying to make this style of wine, because I think you're right. There have been so many Châteauneufs that have come to the market that are so high in alcohol and so concentrated and so big, and a lot of consumers don't want that. Yes, some consumers might want that, you know, but I think a lot of the people that I drink with, and I know they want that balance, they want that elegance, and clearly I see it in the 14. I mean, this is a beautiful wine. I mean, it's very elegant, it's very delicate, and it has, you know, great kind of gamey fruit, that richness of the fruit with that little peppery spice and that still long finish, and you know, it's a beautiful wine.
It's very drinkable.
Yeah.
But you can age, but you can drink it.
How long do you like age your wines? I mean, every vintage has a different sweet spot. I mean, the 90, of course, is still a legendary wine for you, and that's one of the first vintages you made, and it's still, you know, a wine that's drinking well. Do you think that, so every vintage can probably age 30 years, no problem, 40 years? I've had some great bocas.
No.
50s.
During like
No.
the 92, 93, 94, 96, that was lighter. In the 90s, we had a very light vintage, and today, for me, they are a little bit used today. But if you take a 1990, is one of the best vintage, then of course that could age longer. But it depends. But you see, after the 90s, 92, 93, 94, 96, they were lighter vintage. Then suddenly we had 97 with very high acidity, 98 amazing vintage, 99 more, I could say, gamey, bready. For Pégau, it was interesting as well with a style. Sometimes we have the people they like or not. 2000 was a bigger yield as usual, but a great vintage, a great balance. Then for me, I love 2001. 2002 was a disaster. We lost 3/4 of the yield by the rain, the storm, the floods, and the fog every morning for 2 months. No wind at all. And here the wind is really support the vinegrowers to clear everything. Now talking about 2015 in the vintage. 15 is, I love 15. I love 15, but not everybody understands 15. So this is my point. And so many people, they ask me, why you like 15 and you prefer 15 to 16? 15 is a little bit strict, but 15, it's concentrate, deep, licorice, narrow in the mouth, with that licorice smell as well, and the dark, tiny red fruit. And I love 2015. I know it will age for a long time, but it doesn't give sometimes the full expression. But as a vintage, I will bet on it for a long, long aging. 15 remind me 2004, 2001, which they are very concentrate with a strong licorice taste. 2016, it's of course a top vintage with that ripeness and sweetness. Anybody is very sensitive to that. So the 2016 for me, I could say, okay, it's fantastic, but also is a commercial vintage because everybody will love 16, no problem. 15 is more for, I could say, intellectual, is more for professional, they can see further. But the 16, everybody likes it. So this is great to have a vintage like 16 because I don't need to work to sell the wine. This is 16. 17 is different, but it's difficult for me to talk about 17 and to make a general vintage. Some people in Châteauneuf du Pape, they don't have the same view with a vintage 17. Sometimes I have a different view of the people in Châteauneuf. 17 for me, we had a very, very low rain, small rain, not enough. The berries, they were, you know, we make the wine with a full cluster. That means we have the same berries quantity on the bunch, but if we don't have rain, that means each berries, they won't become bigger, they won't swallow. And what happened? There's not juice enough, there's a lot of skin, but also at Domaine du Pégau, making the wine with stamp, you understand the percentage between the stamp and the skin and the juice in the dry vintage is the wine will be concentrate, tannic, and a little bit rough, I could say, rush. Well, and some people they have made 2017 black power, but quite juicy. But for me, it's more tight. But it will be a vintage age longer. Remind me more 88 with a lot of tannin in the wine, or 2005 as well. 2005 and 88. Now, 2005 start just now to be a little open. So 2017 and 2005, they are similar.
Okay. Are some of which vintages are now the 14 is on the marketplace? So do you kind of wait longer than most people to release the wines to the market, or how does that work? Are multiple vintages on the marketplace?
Usually, Domaine du Pégau, we bottling the wine and we release it straight away because we age the wine 2 years in a large barrels, in a large cask. The Châteauneuf, it's 80% Grenache, 6% Syrah, 4% Mourvèdre, and 10% of the different varieties. We have a vineyard co-planted, but when I say co-planted, that means on the same row, we have a Grenache, we have a Counoise, a Mourvèdre, and then next we have some white as well, like we could have a claret, we could have, this is Grenache. This is in a stone, we have mostly Grenache, but we have a corner in that vineyard called Les Escondudes, full of stone. We have a corner with a Counoise, some white varieties as well, because before on the same row, they planted different varieties. And we have 10% of that mixed. And we cannot quantify it exactly, but we have 10% of them. So when we pick the grapes by hand, we put everything in a tank, that means full cluster. We don't practice délestage, we don't practice pigeage, no, we leave it that way with a natural yeast. We just gently pump over, I mean the free range juice going from the tap down, we put on top to homogenize. And we do it twice a day. And every day we bring some fresh flight about picking on top. And we leave the winemaking process for maximum 2 weeks, but without any extraction. We don't want to extract because if we practice the punching, we have the stem and we have the skin. So that's a lot of tannin. The tannin from the skin, they are softer. The tannin from the stem, they are a little bit rough. But the wine for me is more complex and age longer with the stems when it's a winemaking process. But this is also two different groups, two different policy of the winemakers. And then there's a step when the wine is pressed and finished, we age the wine in a large cask, 15,000 gallon, I don't know, 60 hectoliters. So yes, so you see on the right is for the Châteauneuf du Pape, the large one, and on the left is for the Pégau. But all of them, they are old barrel. That means the big one, they are sometimes 90 years old, 60 years old. They don't give any more oaky taste because I always buy barrels secondhand. No oak at my place, no new oak. So what the people they have to remember, it's a full cluster, natural yeast, aging in an old oak, and for 2 years. This is more Domaine du Pégau recipe. Is why you have a very significant difference between a vintage to another, because it's what we get from one vintage, what we get during the harvest, then that will give the wine at the end. But we age all the time 2 years. That means the 2014 Cuvée Reservée was bottled in November 2016 and released.
Very nice. Well, we have a few questions from some of the group. We had a flurry of questions, and maybe Lily will bring a few online. Lily, why don't you bring some of those questions online?
So a few questions that we've gotten, I'll save for a moment. But how much time when you open the Châteauneuf du Pape, like the Cuvée Reserve or the Cuvée Laurence, how much airtime do you give them for the young wines versus the old wines? Do you just open and serve them? Do you decant them? How do you like to serve them?
Usually, I don't like to carafe my wine. No carafe. I like to open a bottle. If it's a vintage, a little hard, a little closed down, sometimes you want to drink a vintage, but you don't know if it's open, or you don't know, it's not open. Then the best is to open the bottle. So you pull out the cork and you leave the bottle in your cellar, I could say in the cool room and fresh room. And then you leave it for 2 or 3 hours maximum. If you have an old vintage, I don't advise to leave so long. An old vintage, you pop the cork and you leave it for maximum half hour, 3/4. For a vintage like a young vintage, but it depends between the Cuvée Reservée, it's better to open, as I said, 3 hours before. For the Cuvée Laurence, is the easiest wine. The Cuvée Laurence aged 4 years in the barrels. That means the same wine as the Reservée will be more mature because it aged longer in the barrels, 4 years. And then the wine will never close down. So when I release the Cuvée Laurence, you can open the wine without any aeration or nothing. Just you can pull the cork and pour the wine in a glass. So the Cuvée Laurence is very interesting for the restaurant or when you have a party and you don't expect it. So then you can open a Cuvée Laurence and the wine is good and open. The Cuvée Reservée is a little more difficult because you need to plan to open a Cuvée Reservée. And if you have a Dacapo, like probably today, then this is, and especially 2015, then you need really to plan to open it. The Dacapo 2016, still actually quite open. It's not closed down yet, but because it has that sweetness, make the envelope of the wine. And when you taste a Dacapo 2016, it seems to be open, but it doesn't give all the flavor I tasted when I made it. So when I make a wine and I try to find the best balance, it will be quite long in the time to be back on that perfect balance, because all the time you have a relay between the different varieties of grapes, between the temperature, the weather, the food you have. It's very complicated. So the Cuvée Dacapo usually, please open it sometimes 6 hours before, 3 hours before. And if it's a 2015, I ask for the first time to carafe it, to put in a carafe.
Jean, did you open it with breakfast?
I did. I followed instructions. I asked Laurence through Sebastian, who asked Laurence, and she said to open it up about 2 hours prior. So I think I opened it about 10:30 in the morning. Losing track of time here, but and then I put in the decanter. I put it in a cool room. That was the AC was blasting, and then I poured a glass. I guess now about an hour ago. So she said 30 minutes, but I left it in the glass, and now I'm kind of getting into the 2015 Capo, which I'm very thrilled to be drinking. Certainly has become a big sensation for the region and for the domain. So where did the idea come from for Capo, and what is Capo? What is Cuvée de Capo?
Da Capo, there's no connection with Al Capone. No.
Me either.
Okay. What happened in the first Da Capo was in 1998, and one of the barrels, the big one, I don't know why, the wine was sensational. Really, it was amazing, and I didn't want to blend with the Cuvée Reservée. I wanted to keep that barrels to make something different, but I didn't know the name I will give it. But because, as I said, the Cuvée Reservée is mostly made with the 13 varieties in different percentage, and the Da Capo comes from Laurence. Laurence is the oldest vineyard we have, more than 100 years old, co-planted completely in the sandy soil. Some people, they expect a Da Capo very powerful wine from stony soil, but the Da Capo come from the sandy soil. Sand is not the sand like the beach. The sand is like this. I bring just something. It's like, it's very soft and very easy to work. We can walk bare feet because it's silice, exactly. It's sandy and silice. Then I decided to call it Da Capo because in Châteauneuf du Pape, we call, I have it here, Symphony of the 13 varieties. Each type of grapes give a note like a music sound. But music in your palate as well. The Grenache, when you talk about the Grenache, you can feel is power, is more like a piano. Then you have the Syrah, is more like a violin. And all the different type of grapes is an instrument, a music instrument, and give a note. Is why I decided to call it, when you come back on the music, you say Da Capo. And it's why I decided to call it Da Capo to repeat the 13 type of grapes of the traditional symphony of Châteauneuf du Pape.
Wow, nice.
That's the story. And I wanted to do the pendant with the white, is why I call the white a tempo.
Beautiful. But you've only made the Capo very few years, what, 5, 6 times or?
7 times. 7 times.
7 times.
98.
20 years. I mean, that's not a lot. Yeah.
No, 98, 2000, 2003, 2007, 2010, 2015, and 2016. It's the first time there are 2 in a row. But don't expect Da Capo no 17, no Da Capo in 18, and no Da Capo in 19. I'm so sorry. 19 is a great vintage. 19 is a great vintage, but I doubt about the perfect balance. Because I'm always looking, the Da Capo, they are different. I mean, it's not a style properly. A Da Capo is 98. You cannot compare 98 and 2000 because 2000, as I said, it was a bigger yield. And 2000 Da Capo is softer and easier drinkable, but great balance, like 2007. But the Da Capo 98 is more like Da Capo 2016. And 2010 Da Capo is more like 2015 Da Capo. So it's, for me, I'm looking for the perfect balance on the top vintage. A top vintage when the weather has been perfect from spring to fall. Then I pick the grapes, and during the harvest, if the weather is still very, very good and the grapes, they are in the perfect condition, the latest picking, I said, let's do the Da Capo. Then I go in my oldest vineyard, the Laurence, because when it's old, the vines are high. When it's old, the grapes, they are very clear. So there's no mildew, no rot. The bunch, they can stay longer on the plant, and it's more concentrate, but it's not cooked. It's not like in the stone. In the sandy soil, keep all the time the freshness of the wine.
That's an amazing wine, beautiful wine. And yeah, I mean, even though it does have a higher alcohol level than the regular cuvee, I mean, you don't really taste the alcohol like that. I mean, it's just kind of somehow it integrates beautifully. How many cases of this do you make when you make it on average?
It's about 10,000 bottles.
10,000. Okay, so yeah, so let me do some 800 cases. Yeah, okay, well, not a lot as well, but glad to have it here. And Lily, we have a few more questions, correct, from some of these?
And they're mostly about the Da Capo in comparison with your other wines. But I want to first start and just mention the Cuvée Laurence. Do you make that every vintage or just in specific vintages?
I'm making Cuvée Laurence every vintage except when I'm making the Cuvée Da Capo.
Okay.
Every vintage I have two wines. Cuvée Reservée, which is our first label, and blend to all the different fields to make only one wine. And then the Cuvée Laurence, it's easy to do it in any vintage because it's an extra aging of the Cuvée Reservée, but same wine. And the Cuvée Da Capo, when I make the Cuvée Da Capo in the top vintage, then I'm not doing the Cuvée Laurence. It's why I cannot share in 3 different cuvées my yield. It's not too small, but I think it's better to have 2 cuvées in each vintage. Voilà.
So the people are wondering, is there any difference in the winemaking process between the Cuvée Reservée and the Cuvée Da Capo?
No.
Exactly.
No. The Cuvée Da Capo is in a top vintage. I mean, really, when I decide to pick the latest, the oldest vineyard, and the 13 type of grapes, and the most concentrate but elegant wine as well, the best balance. Same winemaking process, full cluster, same. The Da Capo aged 2 years in a cask, like the Reservé. The Reservé is bottled in November, so 2 years later. The Da Capo, like the Da Capo 2015, was bottled in December, December 2017. The Da Capo 2016 was bottled in November 2019. Because sometimes it depends, you know, by the organization, but it's always 2 years later, like the Reservé.
And then in comparing the Cuvée Reservée and the Cuvée Da Capo, do you find that there's a different maturity when they reach kind of the ideal window to drink? That the Cuvée Reservée is ready earlier before the Da Capo? Would you age more longer than the other?
Usually the Da Capo is made to age longer. But the Da Capo, even if you drink it, earlier, in one day, the Da Capo, you decide to drink a Da Capo, and you don't know if it's ready. But the Da Capo has always that roundness and sweetness and richness with the elegance on the back. You will always find something in the wine that will please you in the Da Capo. In the Cuvée Reservée, it might be completely closed down, and it's difficult to have in a certain vintage, some pleasure to drink it if it's not the right time.
Perfect.
But the Da Capo, usually by the richness of the wine, you will always find, some pleasure. And if you open it in advance, as I advise, it will be even bigger and showing better.
Perfect.
Yeah, the Capo, the 15, it's got that richness. You hit it on the head. It's the richness, the concentration. It's really a magnificent wine. I mean, it's very impressive. And for me, I want to see this wine 20, 30 years from now. I mean, I can see the longevity and the path of the wine. Certainly great.
But it will be better tomorrow.
Well, I put it back in the bottle because I decanted it. I put it in the decanter. I have my decanter here, my big decanter, and I'll put it back in the bottle, cork it up, and just put it in the fridge, and then it's going to be a Châteauneuf du Pape weekend in the Cape Ann household, that's for sure, because I'm not going to finish these 4 bottles. I could if I was dared. I probably could, but I think I'm going to spread it out over the weekend. The white wine's probably going to be done tonight. I'm definitely, the white wine's going today, but the rest of them, I'm gonna do it over the weekend. When you drink a bottle of wine over a few days, because I do that often, try different things. I just like to put the cork in and put it in the refrigerator. What do you do? Do you do when you want to have a bottle, you don't finish it and you drink it over the weekend?
But usually I open a bottle. I never finished. It's very rare. I drink 1 glass, but I don't drink too much. But I bring the bottle to my parents. They finished everything. Anytime I open the bottle and I drink a glass, I bring back to my parents. They finish all the wine. So for that, there's no problem. If I drink a wine again, is usually when I want to really think about it. It's usually when I try to taste few barriques, or I want to blend something, or to really have a think about it. Then I will taste it on 3 days, even more, because when the wine will be oxidized, it will be very interesting. Sometimes I leave it open, because a good wine doesn't become oxidized fast. So that means for 3 days.
No recorking, you just leave it in the bottle.
Sometimes this is just a test. That doesn't mean you have to do it. But for me, it's a test. And when I taste wine on 1 or 2 days, it's just for my experiment about how the wine will react by oxygenation or by different aroma or taste, as fast it will be oxidized, and how many days I could drink this wine. And this is very important. In a winery as well, when we make the wine, we pour a glass and we leave the glass on the vat, and we see if the juice turn brown, or this is very important. It's like an indicator, and it's just, we have indication the wine is still solid with the air or not. And this is very important, because when you open a bottle of wine and you can, having for 2 days, is the day after the wine is completely finished, oxidized, calm down. That doesn't mean you have some less in your cellar as well for a long aging. You have to be, now the old wine, like a wine for 20, 30 years, of course, when you open it, it won't live for 2 days. Usually a very old wine, you have to drink it all the time, the full bottles. You cannot keep a very old one, because there's no sulfites or young fresh fruit, CO2 as well. There's no bright element we can have in a young wine. Keep the wine fresh. An old wine, it will be very quickly, put down, closed down. Yeah. Right. So now something I test is just, I want to speak about the pink Pégau. My rosé. This is very interesting, because the bottle was, look at the bottle. That was open for a week. And it's like for the white, probably with the acidity and the freshness, it's still very bright and drinkable. This is interesting.
Really? Wow. Well, we were waiting for your pink Pégau. We wanted to try it, but the container is coming. I think it's arriving soon. So hopefully we can have some of your rosé over the summer. And I want to thank you for coming and joining us here. It's been a great exploration into the Rhone Valley and the Châteauneuf du Pape. You are truly one of the greatest winemakers in Châteauneuf du Pape, and you know, your wines are spectacular. And thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you again soon in person. I visited you a couple of times now in Châteauneuf du Pape, and if anybody ever can get to the Châteauneuf du Pape again, we'll certainly connect you with Laurence. She has a great tasting room there, and it's a beautiful region to visit. And thank you so much. We look forward to drinking more.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to have the Zoom with so many people. Thank you to everyone to have participate to that Zoom and to give a part of your time as well to drink Pégau, to support also Pégau, to be faithful for that domain for so many years. So thank you very much. Thank you, John, to give me this opportunity and your great wine tasting. Sebastian, sorry, I didn't need you for translation.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm happy. I was relaxed. Thank you.
Yeah, and Lily for the map. Another thing as well, I'm so sorry, but Domaine du Pégau website actually is on reconstruction. It will be online in 1 week. Then you can check also at pegau.com on the website if you want some more information about the wine. We're still very open to any questions by email as well. And Sebastian or John and Lily, they can really support and help Domaine du Pégau to answer when I'm so busy in my work.
And Laurence,
Wait.
happy birthday in advance. It's Monday for the French
Yes,
lover.
Monday, yes. Monday, 555. So Monday, yes.
Bon anniversaire.
Merci. You know, my vintage is awful. 65. Nowhere there is a good wine. Sometimes I could say port, or Banyuls, so some sweet wine, or so no good.
Sicilia. You need some Vega Sicilia. Unico has made a great 65.
I know I had it once in my life. I already had it once, but that was a long time ago. But now I don't know. But
We'll ask Pablo.
so thank you very much, and everyone, you are welcome to the Domaine du Pégau when you could get a flight to France. You're welcome.
Thank you all so much.
Thank
See
you,
you on
thank you.
Monday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Cheers.